Hello, everybody. This is Kelly and Jim, and we're here talking with Geoff Redknap, special effects artist from the X-Files. Hello, Geoff. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started in this line of work.
I am a makeup effects artist, puppeteer, writer-director based in Vancouver, BC, Canada. I've been doing this, I did the math the other day. I've been working professionally in film and television for 26 plus years. But my real start in professional film and television was the X-Files. My story is that when I was a teenager, I lived in a small northern town in Canada, and I discovered, actually my older brother discovered a book in the library, which was one of the earliest books about makeup effects. And it really was just about mold making, and it included, it was about mold making and how it applied to prosthetics and latex masks. But living in a tiny little town, there was no reason why this book should have found its way to my high school. Like we didn't have an art community. We didn't have any sort of filmmaking in the area. It just so random that this obscure book found its way to me through my brother, through my high school library. And once I got my hands on that, I just started learning how this stuff worked. And I'd become an avid film watcher. And, films like Jaws changed my life. And when I found this book, I started realizing that I could do this for a living. I could make monsters and stuff for a living, or at least a hobby. At the time, it was a hobby. So when I was 12, I got this book and I started figuring stuff out. And by the time I was 16, I was, making masks and animatronic puppets and whatever else I could do in my basement. And then I moved to Vancouver. I did 4 years at university. And when university finished, I was looking for what's next. And I honestly didn't know much about the Vancouver film industry at the time. Didn't know how big it was. Didn't know if makeup effects was something that somebody could do in Canada if they didn't pack up everything and move to Hollywood. But as you probably know, right around then, the X-Files started.
Yes.
Like a lot of people, I don't think I saw it right away. I don't remember watching season 1 when it aired. I think it was more about coming a little late to the party. But then when I finished university and started asking around, I discovered that yes, they were filming it in Vancouver, and yes, there was a makeup effects department. And the thing that's crazy about it is that you don't think of it now is back then the internet was not what the internet is today.
Right.
So I couldn't just jump on Google and find out everything I needed to know about the show and who was doing the work and everything. Basically, the only source of information was magazines, sci-fi magazines, Fangoria, things like that. And as it turned out, I had a friend who was just starting to work for a Vancouver-based digital animation company, a company called Mainframe. They broke onto the scene doing an animated show called Reboot. Or no, was it Reboot? God, it's so long ago, I can't even remember. But they were one of the first companies that was doing a fully CG animated show for kids instead of traditional animation. And my friend got a job there, and he was working his way up, and it turned out that Gillian Anderson's ex-husband was working there as an art director or designer or something. So I asked him to ask Clyde, who was doing the makeup effects on X-Files, and how I could get in touch with him. And so I ended up with a phone number for Toby, and I gave him a call, and I told him what I'd been doing, and he said, "Oh, let's get you in for an interview." And I interviewed. This was towards the end of season 3. I came in for an interview, and we clicked. But he said they're kind of winding down for the season, so maybe next season we'll talk again. And I said, okay, that's great. And then a week later, he called back and said, "Can you start tomorrow?" Because I guess they got a big build on an episode, and they were just like swamped. So they were like, "We need help." now. So I went in and started working there, and it was a lot of learning on the job, because I'd started the process of figuring out makeup effects on my own. But when you're a kid tinkering in his basement, small town BC, you move slowly. I remember the first few weeks in Toby's shop, I was learning so much stuff so quickly. And that was kind of the X-Files shop when it was in Vancouver. It was a wild and crazy roller coaster of doing things you'd never done before very, very fast, because TV is generally a faster paced medium than film. They tend to design things, spend months and months building them, right, and then you shoot them for months and months. But TV, it's like, no, we're starting a new episode. Okay, let's design the monster. Okay, here's the design. Go build it. You have 3 days. You start shooting on Tuesday.
Wow.
And the turnaround on things, it was just wild. Like, we'd have a couple of days, like overnight for some things. At most, it was usually 3 days, maybe. Towards the end, when it was a big build, like a full creature suit or something, I remember that Toby and company finally convinced production that we needed more time. So some of those builds turned into a week to 10 days to get things done. But a lot of times people in production, they just don't see the big picture. And okay, we got an episode coming up where there's a guy in a creature suit, and you need to build it from scratch. And then they take 5 days to cast the actor, to literally pick the guy that's going to be the monster. And it's like, those are 5 days that we could have been building the creature suit.
Right.
If you got on it quicker, or recognize that you need to make a decision now, not, let's keep looking,
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, I tell everybody that when we were working on that, it was Toby's shop, I think when they were doing season 2, like I said, I joined in 3, but in 2, I think they had maybe 3, Toby and 3 guys. And then when I got there, it expanded a little bit, and through 3, 4, 5, our team was anything from like 5 people to maybe a dozen. But we pretty much worked 100-hour weeks. Like,
Crazy.
most of the time, like, we shot X-Files 10 months out of the year. And if we were lucky, we'd have a month or 2 off before we started working on it again. And at the time, I was kind of lucky to have 1 or 2 days off a month. My craziest week I worked, it was for the Travelers episode. I worked a 30-hour shift, took 10 hours off, worked a 30-hour shift, took 10 hours off, worked a 30-hour shift.
Wow.
So
That's insane.
Yeah. And because it was, makeup effects was not something that there had been a lot of in Vancouver before that. Anytime there was a makeup effects component on a show, it tended to mean that they were bringing in people from LA to hiring an LA company to build something and bring it here. And even on X-Files in the very beginning, there were a couple of things that I know they farmed out to LA. Like, when I was there was a thing in the shop. I think it was from that Freak Show episode. I forget the name. Yeah. There was this little guy, this little sort of quasi.
Yeah.
We just talked about that.
Yeah, and I think K&B built that. K&B being the company best known for The Walking Dead now.
Oh, yeah.
But I think they farmed that out to them because Toby was busy with other builds. Something like when you have a small shop, sometimes you get overwhelmed with what you're doing, and they might have just gone, okay, this one thing, let's send it to K&B. In fact, Toby might have, like, FX shops will do that. When they know they've got too much on their plate, they'll call up their friends at another shop and say, hey, can you build this thing for me? So
that's pretty ironic that he said K&B, because some of the donations Chris Carter gave us, there's a lot of literature and stuff that says that's got K&B on it.
Oh yeah. Well, when X-Files went to LA, was it? I think it was Optic Nerve that took over makeup effects on the show.
I'm not sure.
I'd have to look it up, but I mean, again, it could have jumped around in those seasons, and it could have also been a collaborating thing where they brought in stuff from other shops. KMB's a shop that's always been known for doing big and fast. And so if you had something that was overwhelming and you needed it quick, KMB would be a great shop. And they're great guys there, Howard and Greg. I've been lucky enough to work with them a few times now, but
Awesome.
I digress. Yeah, we didn't have a very big team and we had to just do it all. And one of the things that made it challenging is that, you know, there's kind of two sides to makeup effects. There's the shop side where you build everything, and then there's on set where you're applying makeups or handling prop pieces, bodies, gags, blood rigs, whatever it is. And there are makeup effects artists that specialize in one or the other, and there are guys that do both. And when we were doing the X-Files, there really was no choice but to do both. You know, there was, it's not like you could build the stuff and then call IATSE 891 and say, hey, I need 3 makeup effects artists to go to set on Tuesday, because odds are that those 3 makeup effects artists were standing beside you in the shop. You know, there were some makeup artists in Vancouver that had some experience with makeup effects, and in the later seasons we started relying on some of those artists that wanted to do more makeup effects. But honestly, most of the makeup effects people on X-Files were the artists that started in the shop and then got permitted to go to set. And then over time, we accumulated the requirements for IATSE. And then one by one, we started joining the union and we became actual IATSE union members. But because of the way it started, we ended up coming into the shop on a Monday and doing a 10-hour day, and then, you know, finding out you need to go to set that night for a few hours or all night. You know, you would literally do a day at the shop and then do a day on set.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Did you have a preference? Did you prefer to be in the shop or on set?
Well, doing X-Files, I was just excited to do any of it. And I mean, I have to give Toby credit, because I never really thought about myself as being an on-set makeup artist. I just thought of myself as building this stuff. And he just very early on in my stint in his shop, he just looked at me and decided I had some qualities that would work well on set. I don't know what they were. I was a pretty shy guy at
Whatever it was, Toby saw it.
Yeah, he saw something and said, you know, I think you're going to come to set with me on, I think the first episode was the crocodile alligator one, whatever. It's got what is it?
Quagmire.
Yeah, Quagmire. Yeah. I think that was the first day I went on set for X-Files. Somebody had a bite on their leg, and I went in with Toby and we did that. And, you know, I mean, I had no idea how film sets worked. I'd worked on a couple of student films. Like after university, I volunteered on student films, which, you know, they were just winging it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Toby saw something and he encouraged me to do set work. And then I started enjoying it. And I mean, generally I liked both sides of it. But later on, trying to remember when. It was after X-Files, maybe 2-3 years after X-Files, I just sort of came to the realization that I got into filmmaking, into the film business, because I loved making films. And I felt I was doing what I wanted to be doing if I was on set, because I was there watching the process and learning how to make films. The shop work is great, but like I said, there's some people that are more suited to the shop work than the set work. The set work can be very stressful. If you're the kind of person that doesn't manage pressure and stress well, then set can be terrifying, you know, because it all moves very fast, and there's a lot of big personalities.
Yeah.
It's changing a little bit now, but way back, you know, there were directors and producers that yelled and screamed, and there were actors that were not pleasant to be around. So if you were a person that didn't manage stress or didn't have interpersonal skills, you could find yourself, with an ulcer. So some people prefer to just go to work in one place, the shop, and do their thing, and kind of it's two different worlds, but some people are better at that. But like I said, I wanted to make big picture. I wanted to learn how to make movies, so I started focusing on set work, and that's all I do now. I really, the only time I'll go to a shop is if I need to directly consult on something for a show that I'm doing.
Very interesting.
Right.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, being on set, working with all the people, that's definitely interesting. But I also am intrigued by you use your imagination and just come up with this creature based on some little bit of information that they give you. That's interesting too.
Yeah, well, it's I guess that is two different sides. Some people are very much about the artistic process to create. I mean, like that thing you were just showing me, imagine that's in the script and you got a bunch of people up and they got to figure out what it's going to look like, how you're going to make it, how it's going to, everything. So that can be fun.
Did you have a lot of interactions with any of the stars, any of the co-stars or anything?
It varied. Initially, not a lot. It's interesting because the stories I heard from the other effects artists that I was working with, in the beginning it was mostly Toby and a guy named Mike Fields. You've probably seen his name come up. Actually, I think you guys posted a collection of t-shirts, swag t-shirts. Was that you guys?
It might have been. We
you post so a lot.
So much.
I think it was you guys, but there was a t-shirt, I think from season 2 or 3 that had a drawing of a whole bunch of the X-Files characters and everything. I noticed it because Mike drew it. And Mike was one of the effects guys that joined Toby just before I did, in season 2. He literally moved from, he was born in Eastern Canada. He was working in Florida, and he uprooted and moved to Vancouver to work on the show.
Wow.
And he became one of the guys that I was working with a lot, and I still work with him. I worked with him yesterday.
Nice.
That's good.
But yeah, I mean, there's basically a group of makeup effects guys and people in Vancouver that started on the X-Files, and they now represent kind of the core of the senior makeup effects community in Vancouver. And back then there was maybe a dozen people doing this kind of stuff in total, and now there's a couple hundred at least. But yeah, Mike told me just before I started that things were a little different. Things were the show felt smaller, and there was a tighter community, and they were, he told me stories of how he was always talking to Duchovny and showing him stuff and drawing t-shirts for him and getting, stuff signed. And they did that episode where David and Jillian age. I think it's in a submarine.
Yeah.
They did that one before I joined in, and they said that was that was the big episode where makeup effects worked with Dave and Jillian every day, pretty much. But there were times over the few years that I did things like the episode where what's the name of the one where Duchovny loses his arms? It's like a nightmare where he.
I can see that.
It's episode Kill Switch.
Yes, Kill Switch. That was my first big episode where I worked directly with David, because I had to do the burns on his wrists, and then they evolved into the stumps.
Yeah.
One of the photos I posted was from that episode. We kind of went. Wait, where am I looking at? But yeah, I mean, you interacted with them. It was hard not to. I don't know why I can't find it.
How was that done?
Oh, there it is. Yeah, this was a photo this was the first photo I released to the podcast guy.
Yeah.
It was partway through the makeup. They're glued on but not painted. So, and that's Tracy, our third AD on the show.
That is pretty. It's cool.
It's interesting.
Well, the burns were just a construction makeup on his wrists, and then the stumps were just the old. We molded his shoulder and created a fake stump, and then he would put his arms behind his back, glue that on, and then it was the old. He's lying on a gurney that's got an opening in the bottom of it for his arms and shoulders to drop through. It's generally called a slant board gag, when a part of the actor is replaced with a fake part. And you're sticking their head and shoulders out of an opening and then attaching something.
Yeah.
Right. I wonder how they did the episode Home. Mrs. Peacock. How
Same kind of.
How did they do that? Made her look like no arms, no legs, and.
That's
well, the construction department built a cart that had more depth to it than you would normally think on a cart, so that she could lie on it and tuck her arms through holes into the cart. And I don't remember how the legs, I don't think the legs were in the cart, but they might have just been sort of tucked under it. Nowadays, they just put green screen on the leg, paint them out. But yeah, we made stumps for her legs and arms and did them the same kind of way as Kill Switch, except a little more extensive.
Yeah. A Kill Switch. We got one of the helmets in Kill Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk. I want to talk about an episode that I definitely, it's underrated. It's not a fan favorite, but it's a fan favorite of mine. Sanguinarium.
Yeah.
I love that episode. It's such a good episode.
That's the hospital one, right?
Yep. Plastic surgeon.
Yeah, that was.
I forget that actor's name. He was from West Side Story, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember if I don't think I did his makeup. I mean, the only thing, he had the gag where he cuts his own forehead open and
Yes.
Cut his whole face off.
Yeah, I don't think I was involved in that one, but I did a bunch of the other things. I did I was part of the, let me think, what's in that episode? There's the acid face peel goes awry.
Yeah.
That was one. We built a body. I don't remember who exactly built the body. I think I was involved in it, but most of those things are a group effort in the shop, putting together a body like that. But the best part about that body was that we brought it into set. We dressed it into the chair. We made it all gooey and bloody and everything. And I remember the set was kind of like a corridor, like a crossroad of hallways.
Yep.
And we were in one of the rooms and putting this thing in. And then Jillian walked through the corridor and she looked over there and she screamed because she didn't know there was somebody there. And she had a genuine reaction to seeing a grisly body lying in a chair. So she shrieked. And then I seem to recall her being quite squeamish about, working with the body. And, swinging between not wanting to look at it and giggling.
Oh.
What I kind of remember. But yeah, that was pretty early on. What episode number was that?
Oh, you'd have to throw that at me. I don't know the number.
I can't remember if that was 4 or 5. It was probably, it was definitely 4, somewhere in season 4.
Memory.
So it was pretty early on. I hadn't had a lot of interactions with Jillian directly, and that was fun to kind of make her shriek.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You would have thought by then she wouldn't be surprised by much, but.
Right.
Yeah. No, she I remember on postmodern Prometheus.
Yep.
Yeah, we did the scene in the car where she's sitting in the back seat with Mutato, And I think at that point in the episode, she was not aware that his face was animatronic. So he was sitting there with his second face, and it's over here, wasn't it? And it moved. And again, she got all excited that its eye could move and its little mouth would move and stuff. So she didn't know I was on the other end of a radio making it do that.
That's good. That's gotta let you know you did good work, because you're getting those reactions.
Yeah, no, it's fun when they have a genuine reaction to things like that.
In that episode, in Postmodern, in that episode, right at the end scene where the actress is on the Jerry Springer show.
Yeah.
She's holding the baby.
Is that what's behind you?
Yeah. One of
them's down there. You know, who did the baby?
I think it must have been someone in our shop. I didn't do it, but I think.
Here, let me go get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go get it.
Yeah, our Mutato baby.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. I don't remember. I mean, one thing you got to understand about shows like, well, any show really, how much work goes into something is going to depend on how much screen time it gets.
Yeah,
You know?
they've got very little screen time.
Yeah.
But the detail on this face is amazing.
Yeah, the detail. This was a Chris Carter donation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, it looks like somebody in the shop sculpted it up, and it looks like a Mike Fields sculpt to me.
Mike
So
Field.
Yeah, well, when we opened up one of the boxes, I had from Chris Carter, I had no clue, you know, it was all wrapped up, and all of a sudden I opened up one of the wrappings and stuff, and one of the eyes is staring at me. Caught me off guard. You know.
yeah, they're probably doll eyes.
Yeah, it's definitely, it surprises me, like the detail, like I was saying, on the face, and you barely even see it for a second in the episode. You know what I mean? How much work actually must have went into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, makeup effects is a sort of can be unfair sometimes in that regard, because but I mean, it's the nature of filmmaking. Like when they're planning something, they might have all good intentions that this scene is going to be 5-10 minutes of the episode, and we're going to feature this and blah, blah. And then at some point, something changes. They either run out of time, or in the edit, they decide that this isn't working as well as something else, so they cut it. But there's also shows where they just, expect everything all the time, and they don't use it. I worked on X-Men 3, and we did these. They were known as the stunt mutants because it was part of the big end scene in Alcatraz. There were all these mutants running around fighting. Yeah. And we had like 20 stunt performers that were designed to be specific mutant characters, and they all went into the same makeup every day for pretty much 6 or 8 weeks. And almost every day they just wouldn't film them.
Oh my God.
Wow.
If they did film them, it was just bodies running past camera, or literally feet, and just one of those, they've got more money than common sense, and they're just covering their asses and doing these makeups every single day and not sure what they're going to use. And then sometimes they never use them. So, but TV shows tend to be a little more, if they spent money on it, they're going to film it.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a photo with Jerry Springer actually, and his autograph from that episode.
Wow.
I was going through things. I found that the other day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But to backtrack to Sanguinarium.
Yeah.
What else happened on that episode?
Liposuction.
The liposuction one. That one creeps me out. That was a pretty good scene.
Oh yeah. I kind of don't remember what we did for that episode, but I think there's an aftermath, isn't there? Don't they go in and they find it, it's just a bloody mess?
Oh, after that liposuction, yeah, it was.
Yeah, because I do remember. One of my things I remember about that episode was a Kim Manners episode. I'm sure you're well versed in Kim Manners. Kim Manners was an amazing man. He was one of the reasons that I decided to focus on set work instead of shop work, because watching him direct was a master class, and I learned so much being on his episodes. But in that episode, I remember coming in to dress the set for, I believe it was the post liposuction scene, and I had 4-liter jugs of blood. And you know, when you're dressing something like blood on a set or on an actor or whatever, it's a lot easier to add blood than remove blood. So you don't want to go too big too quick, because if they come in and they say that's way too much, then it's a huge cleanup. But you can always add more. So I started adding a little bit in strategic places, and then Kim came in and he was like, gonna need more than that. And I was like, okay, a little more. And he looked at me and he took the jug and turned it down and started pouring.
Yeah.
Or he is like, okay, less, understood. Lots of blood. So that was a nice moment with Kim.
Yeah.
There was a magazine in the day, I forget, I think it was called Sci-Fi World or something. And they got a hold of a photo from Sanguinarium, which was me and Kim Manners looking down over the acid face peel body. And they published it. And I was thrilled that they got that photo and published it. So I got some of it. My colleagues in the shop were not so thrilled, because I was kind of the new guy.
Oh yeah.
Up in a magazine.
I could say.
Yeah. So there was that, but I have that really nice photo with Kim inspecting my work and me diligently looking down on him, waiting for his orders. What else? There was a laser procedure gone awry where the laser burns right through the
Right through.
Skull, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Mike Fields and I were doing that. I seem to recall it being just a couple of simple appliances, but those appliances concealed tubing so that we could blow smoke. Smoke coming out of this person that was being lasered. And I was thinking about that day this morning. Something about film and television, practical effects like rain, smoke, fog. How well they work has a lot to do with lighting. Like, if you may have noticed on the X-Files, there's a lot of times where you notice that it's raining, but they're not acting like it's raining.
Yep.
Like, might not have umbrellas and they're just trying to pretend it's not raining. Well, that's because actual rain does not read on film very well. So if they want it to look like it's really raining, they will create rain from rain towers. And I think it has to do with the size of the droplets and the amount of water, but then it will film and look like you're in a rainstorm. But if it's just actually raining lightly, it often doesn't show up on film. And the same applies to smoke. So in that laser scene, Mike and I were hiding under the table with clove cigarettes and tubes. Neither of us smoked, so this was disgusting. And we were puffing away on these clove cigarettes and blowing it into the tubes that led up to the guy's wounds, and the smoke was billowing out. But I remember that Kim was yelling from his monitors, more smoke, we don't see it, more smoke. And we were puffing as fast as we could and blowing as hard as we could. And anyone that was right there by the actor could see that there was lots of smoke. And I'm not knocking the DP, but it was just one of those setups where the nature of the lighting was not catching the smoke. So from Kim's point of view, he wasn't seeing his smoke. And we were getting sick under the table. And, so that was fun. But then I'm sure what happened is they realized that they needed to backlight it a little or something, and they tweaked the lighting, and then it worked. And we got the shot. But yeah, lots of grim, gory deaths in that episode, and
Definitely
fun moments. And
see, it's interesting, and how you hear stuff and how they make stuff, and like you just said, the cigarettes, you would never think that.
no.
So that's, that's why.
How many times we've watched that episode? I never would have occurred to me there was somebody under that table smoking clove cigarettes.
Now, every time I watch the episode,
Yeah.
dudes are smoking underneath the table.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different film smokes, like atmospheric smoke, and there's different types of it, especially right now with COVID. I mean, a lot of film sets aren't even allowed to use atmospheric smoke. They're sort of coming back to using it a little bit, but some of it was deemed that it's a particulate in the air and it increases the transmittability of a virus. So they just said no smoke, no atmospheric smoke on sets. Honestly, if we had to do that gag today, I'm sure we'd come up with something that wasn't clove cigarettes. In fact, what would probably happen now is that makeup effects would build the prosthetics and the tubing, and special effects would provide a smoke, be it dry ice, be it, some sort of chemical device, whatever they want to use. And things change, like I've seen things on set change where we used to do things one way and now we do things another way. And it's just technology and innovation kicking in.
Yeah.
I mean, most of what we built for the X-Files was foam latex, and now everything is silicone. Almost everything. Foam latex has kind of gone the way of the dinosaurs. Although a lot of us old timers miss it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is it easier to work with, or?
Well, they both have different qualities. Foam is light, silicone is heavy. If it's a simple prosthetic, silicone's great. If it starts getting to be really big, I worked on Star Trek Beyond, and Joel Harlow made and is put together 56 different aliens, and some of those heads weighed so much because silicone. Whereas if it was 10, 15 years earlier, they would have all been foam latex, and that's like wearing a sponge on your head as opposed to wearing dense rubber. Yeah, just everything about the two mediums, the two materials, you have to paint them differently, glue them differently, they move differently, they behave differently. Mostly silicone is the turnaround on making it is faster, and the quality of some people feel the paint jobs have more translucency to them. You can make foam look translucent, but it's kind of an old art form. So especially now, if you've got a whole new generation that's painting silicone, if you ask them to paint foam, they probably won't get the results that.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway.
Is there any episodes that gave you the most challenges?
Oh yeah. I think. I mean, the biggest challenge always was time, trying to get things done in enough time, or in too little time.
Right.
Trying to build an animatronic creature in 2 days, or building a full creature suit in over a weekend, or building 15 bodies in 5 days, or whatever it was. But I mean, that's kind of a short answer to a big question, struggling with the time and the schedule.
Right.
I mean, personally, it was my introduction into professional film work, and so like my first big prosthetic makeup on an actor, as opposed to like a piece or a dummy or a body, was the Home episode. And again, I guess because Toby saw something in me, he brought me out on that episode. He put me on the Edmund Peacock makeup that with him, and after we did the first day or two, figured out how it was, the coloration and the tweak, what we needed to make it work, then it became my makeup. So for the rest of the episode, I did Edmund Peacock, and that was probably the first time I'd really been doing a full head prosthetic makeup for a character that was regular in the show. So that was a big learning experience, and we did things a lot differently back then. Now everything is airbrushing and stuff like that. Back then it was grease paint.
Yeah.
So
Definitely different. That was a big episode to start to like make your first prosthetic for.
yeah. I mean, I didn't sculpt it, but it was a big one for my on-set participation to be in charge of one of the main characters and there every day. And I seem to what episode number was that? Was that beginning of 4?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Beginning
I think
4.
like I did the end of 3, then I had a break because we went on hiatus, and then I came back for 4. And I seem to recall the first few episodes were quite light. But then all of a sudden Home was coming up.
Yeah, that was season 4, episode 2.
Yeah. So we did not have a lot of running time, run up for getting ready to do Home. And I would imagine at that point, Kim Manners, who directed it, he realized that we needed as much time as we could get,
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, I mean, he was good that way. He would structure the schedule so big stuff didn't happen on day 1 if we needed more time, and he really knew how to shoot our monsters. That was a thing. I mean, Rob Bowman and Kim Manners, they both had great sense of style, and they were both good directors, but they had different sensibilities. Kim loved to showcase our work, and Rob tended to like to be more cryptic about our part of it. He liked the actors and the story, and like sometimes we'd build things like the is it the Pine Bluff variant, the one with the melting bodies all over the place, or is that
Over there?
Yeah. We have
I
a
You have
skull
a
from
head.
that.
Yeah, we made like 15 bodies for that episode, and honestly they're barely in the episode, apart from a couple of them that get seen. We filled a theater with them, and then
Yeah, we have one of the heads.
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, the Home episode was huge for us, and to have prosthetic characters as the main characters, and then all sorts of crazy gags like Mama's cart and the babies, and I don't remember what else we did, but it was a wild and crazy episode. And I like to tell the story that when we were filming the birthing scene, we were on the set in the Peacock House kitchen, and I believe it's Edmund goes to the kitchen sink that's full of filthy, dirty dishes, and he finds a fork, which he then uses to cut the umbilical cord off of a new baby, which I think the baby is technically his son and his brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kim Manners turned to the crew and said, "I will probably never work again after this airs."
Yeah.
Because he knew we were doing crazy stuff in that episode. It was a James Wong and Glenn Morgan written episode, and they'd really pushed the boundaries of
Definitely push the boundaries.
Yeah, and I mean, you probably know better than me, but I think the episode was banned after it first aired.
It was.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a disturbing episode in a lot of ways, but it is a love letter to the Texas Chainsaw, and it's fun.
Yeah, I got the reference to Texas Chainsaw, the vibe, and I also, the kids playing baseball kind of reminded me of, remember the movie The Sandlot?
Yeah.
That kind of like that seems a little like that, but yeah, I saw it's got that horror reference.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing I learned on that episode. Like I said, I did Edmund Peacock's makeup, and I was new to film sets and actors and working with actors and understanding how they worked, and I guess there was a naive part of me that thought Meryl Streep is an actress, and the guy in the monster mask is a guy in a monster mask. And I didn't realize that they are the same thing, because I was working with Edmund. I think it was the scene where they're burying the baby in the baseball field out in the rain. And I was out there standing beside him because it was actually raining. And I was, I was there with a towel to try to keep his head from soaking up too much water. I think I was holding an umbrella too, or maybe the costume person was. But at one point I noticed that he was crying. He was so into his character and the moment and the performance that he was crying. And I was like, wow, monsters cry too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite a learning process.
That's one of our like goals with our whole collection is to highlight the like the monsters and your work and all the people behind the scenes that really play a vital role to bringing us the show. It's not just Mulder and Scully, without the special effects, without Edmund, that episode, it wouldn't be anything. So we try to highlight all those people.
Well, I can tell you a lot of them will appreciate that. Because a lot of us are, well, I mean, in this day and age, there is a lot of talk of makeup and makeup effects, and you get a lot more credit than we used to. And
Right.
so it's nice, but it's also great to hear that you're focusing on the monsters and the characters and stuff like that.
Definitely.
I have an expression I coined on film sets, and that is that, what is my expression actually? The makeup effects people eat lunch with the monsters. Oh, because honestly, even though it's make believe in his movies and it's professional film crews, like if you've got a guy who's on set and his face is, mangled, or it's some horrible slimy creature, a lot of people don't want to sit at a table and eat lunch with this guy. So I noticed that monsters tend to end up sitting at tables by themselves. So I made sure that makeup effects and my colleagues would go eat with them, keep them company.
We'll eat dinner with them.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it can also be quite a display of skills, because if you've got a crazy prosthetic face on, you're not just chowing down on lunch. You're basically cutting things into the tiniest pieces, and you're pulling your face, sticking it.
Trying to get it in there without messing up all your work.
Yeah, try to keep things.
I mean, what the actor that had to like wear all that stuff, I mean, how long did he have to have all that stuff on?
You mean Edmund Peacock?
Yeah.
All day, unless he had a short day. I mean,
that's some craziness.
Yeah, I mean, it varies from day to day. Sometimes you'd come in and do the makeup, and the makeup was probably about 3 hours, and then they'd film for a couple hours and they'd be done for the day. But other days you'd be wearing that for the whole, 14, 15, 16-hour day. I mean, that's one thing with makeup effects. You tend to come in a few hours early and stay late, unless you're only in part of the day's work. But if you're in all of it, you tend to come in hours early and stay a little late, and then your days are kind of long. I mean, if somebody's wearing a makeup like that all day long, you kind of have to. You have to think of what they can tolerate. It's not a great idea to have an actor in a prosthetic makeup 5 days a week for long days, because it can be a little hard on their skin.
Oh yeah, that's some crazy.
Yeah, that is absolutely interestingly crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, that was I mean, looking at this now with 25 years more experience, I see the things that are different, better. But I'm often surprised when I look back at some of these things like early X-Files, and I will say that I say that we worked under a lot of time pressure, and we were building things sometimes overnight or in 2 days or whatever. For the most part, we had an amazing crew, and the directors, the regular directors, and the DPs, they knew what we were up against. So if we came in one day and it was like, guys, we've been up all night, we built this in one day, it's not the best thing we've ever built. The DP would go, okay, more shadows, we'll shoot a little wider. They'd help us out, and they were great that way. Kim would line up a frame, and he would look at a shot, and he'd be like, if he saw something that he figured we could fix, he'd ask us to fix it. And if he saw something and he knew we just, this is what it is, you can't fix this on set, then it would be, more shadows, more hair across their face, just change change things to make it work for the day. So yeah, I mean, I sometimes, and then you look at the whole thing. You go back and look at an episode of the X-Files and you remember all those crazy days and long nights and rushed work and how you maybe didn't think it was the best work on your part on the day. And then you look at the episode, it's like, this all totally works. By the time it's all put together and the editor cuts out the bad stuff and keeps the good stuff, and suddenly you look like a rock star because it all,
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Because we're constantly watching the X-Files, and I have never ever had an episode where I was like, look at that cheesy effects. You know, like some old movies, when you watch them, you're like, oh my God, this is so cheesy. I can't believe I watched that. That's never ever happened to me watching the X-Files. Your work has always held up.
oh, thank you. I mean, it's a lot of people's work because,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people had hands on that show over the years.
Yeah.
But,
It's a team.
Yeah.
yeah.
Was there any episodes that, you know, that you really enjoyed? I mean, I know you enjoyed, you know, most of them. Do you, I don't want to say a favorite episode because, you know, you hear that all the time, but do you got like an episode that you were like, it was a home run?